Hello everyone, Jake here with Unreal RPG Mastery. In this video, we are going to implement an attack combo system, but before we begin the implementation, I'm going to go over the design of the logic we are going to implement. That way you can have a better idea of what we're doing and why. So here I have a flowchart of the basic design of this attack combo system. It's going to start out with the player attack input, and after that, we need to check, is the player attacking? If the player is attacking, then we need to save the attack. If the player is not attacking, then we need to perform the attack, wait a specific amount of time until the attack can continue, and after the time has passed, we need to check, was the attack saved? And if it was saved, we need to continue the attack. If the attack wasn't saved, then we do nothing. The reason we need to know if the player is attacking is so we can know when to save the attack. Because if the player is attacking, we don't want to cancel immediately and perform an attack again. And for the perform attack functionality, this is going to play the animation as well as increment the attack count. And based on the attack count, we play a different animation. Now that we've gone over the design and we have an idea of the variables and functions we're going to need, we can go into the engine and start implementing the functionality. We're going to start by creating all the variables that we're going to need for this attack combo system. We could create all these variables inside the character blueprint, but instead what we're going to do is create all of these variables inside of an actor component. So that way you can add the component to any character and have this functionality already implemented. Okay, so let's go to the combat component. So let's go to combat system, blueprints, components, and let's open the combat component. Okay, now let's create the variables we're going to use for the attack combo system. So from the flowchart, we know that we're going to need an integer, and this is going to be the attack count. We're going to need a boolean, and this boolean is going to let us know if the attack was saved or not. Let's add the attack animations for the attack combo system. We're going to need to set multiple attack animations. And to do that, we're going to use an array. Arrays are something that you need to learn for game development. Arrays are very useful. An array is a container that can hold multiple values, but arrays can only hold values that are of the same data type. What I mean by data type is variable type. So if you create an array using the data type string, you can only hold strings inside of that array. Each thing that is stored inside the array is often referred to as elements. Each element has an index associated with it, so you can get an element at a specific index. If you know the index of the element you need, then you won't need to loop through the array to find the element you're looking for. We're going to make an array of montages for the attack combo system. We're going to access the elements, or montages in our case, from the array based on an attack count index. So now let's actually create the array. We could add the attack animations array to the character blueprint or to the combat component, but we have multiple weapon styles implemented. So instead, let's create the array in the base weapon actor. So go back to the base weapon actor. Let's create a new variable. And the variable type we're going to use is animmontage. We can now select this icon here, and we're going to make this an array. And we're going to call this variable attack montage. Add this variable to the montages category. Now that we have implemented an array of montages, we need to implement functionality to get from the array, play the montage, and increment the array index. So let's create a function for performing an attack. Let's go back to the character blueprint, and let's create a new function. We'll call this one perform attack. For this function, we're going to need a couple inputs. The first input is going to be an integer, and this will be the attack index. The second one will be a boolean, and this will just allow us to use a random index if we want to. We'll call it b random index. So that way, if we want to feed in an attack index, we can, or if we want to use a random index, we can also do that. Now we're going to need to get the attack animations from the weapon actor. So to do that, we can get the combat component, get weapon actor. Let's get attack montages. From there, we can call it get. And this just returns a temporary copy of the item in the array at the specified index. The specified index will be get attack index. And whenever we call get attack index, that just gives us our local attack index variable. And the next thing we need to do is check, is this montage valid? If it is valid, play animmontage. When there's a pure getter like this, each time that you have this plugged in, it's going to call this again. And to make things a little bit easier, let's just go ahead and promote this to a local variable. Promote to local variable, we'll L underscore attack montage. Okay, and now we can get the local variable and plug that in here. We can also have a selector node here, and we need to get the local variable random index If we're using a random index, we can just random array item. If it is false, we can get from the attack index. Okay, now we can test this out and see if it works. So let's create an input to test this out with. So go to edit, project settings, input, and we'll create a light attack input. And this will be the left mouse button. Okay, now let's add the light attack action event. And here we can call perform attack. We don't have the increment attack index functionality implemented yet, so for now we can just do random index. Okay? And now let's go ahead and set up our animations, combat system, course files, animations, light sword, light attack. Let's go ahead and select all three of these animations, right click and select create anim montage. And now we can open up our tough sword weapon actor and we can add our attack montages here. So we're gonna have light attack 1, light attack 2, and light attack 3. Okay, now compile and save. And let's test it out and see if it works. As you can see, he's playing the animations. He's just playing a random animation from the array. As you can see, the root motion doesn't exactly look right. So let's go ahead and fix that. So let's navigate back to where the animations are. We can do that by selecting the tough sword, and selecting the browse to asset icon here. And let's enable root motion for all of these. We could open all of them up and go down here to root motion and select enable root motion to be true. But what we're going to do is select all three of them, and under asset actions select bulk edit via property matrix. This will allow us to quickly change the settings of all three of these assets. So under root motion, we just need to select enable root motion to be true. And after you've done that, select file, save all. Okay, now let's test it out and see if it looks better. Okay, it looks a lot better now. But you may notice if you spam the attack button, the character just continues to cancel into the attack animation over and over again. And you might be wondering, how can we fix this? Well, let's refer back to the flowchart. As you can see here, we have the player attack input. If the player is attacking, we save the attack. If the player is not attacking, we perform the attack. So right there, that tells us exactly what we need to do. And that also made me realize that we forgot to add an isAttacking variable to the combat component. So let's create a new variable, make this up top boolean. We'll call this one b_isAttacking. Okay, now compile and save. And here what we can do is we can get the combat component, we can get isAttacking. If the character is attacking, then we set attack saved to true. If isAttacking is false, then we perform the attack, and inside the perform attack function, we can add set isAttacking. And we can set that to true. Now let's test it out and see if that is fixed. So as you can see, the character attacks once, and after that he's no longer able to attack. So what's going on here? Why are we getting this issue? In order to help visualize this issue, let's use some debugging tools built into the engine. So I'm going to select play here, so I can play in a new window, and I'm going to move the window over to the side. I'm going to select the combat character. Okay, and now I'm going to attack. And you could actually see the flow of execution there. So I'm going to attack again. And now you can see that the flow of execution is going into the true path. So the first time, the flow of execution goes down the false path. And after that, isAttacking becomes true. And now we can see that the isAttacking boolean variable is stuck to being true and is never set to false. And once it goes down to the false path, the perform attack function is called. And once this function is called, we set isAttacking to true. Once it is set to true, it is never set to false, and that creates this issue. So we essentially need to set isAttacking to false after a period of time has passed. Referring back to the flowchart, we can see after perform attack, we need to wait until the attack can continue. So we need to wait an amount of time until the attack can continue. And after that, we check, was the attack saved? And if it was, we continue the attack. And after that amount of time has passed, we can also set attacking to false there. So let's go ahead and implement this functionality to wait and then continue the attack. So we basically need a way to wait an amount of time, and after that amount of time has passed, we need to check if the attack was saved. If it was saved, then we continue the attack. And this is going to allow us to combo multiple attacks and continue them. And there's a lot of different ways that we could wait an amount of time to continue the attack. We could run a delay. However, a delay is not really a good way to do this. You could create a lot of bugs and issues using delays for a system like this. A really precise and accurate way to choose whenever we can continue the attack would be with an animation notify. So let's do this with an animation notify. Let's go to Combat System Blueprints, Anim Notifies, and let's create a new animation notify. This will be of type Anim Notify. And we'll call this one Continue Attack. _AN. Okay, now open it up. And we need to override the received notify function. And we need to get the owner of the mesh component. The owner of the mesh component in this case will be the combat character. And so we could go ahead and cast the combat character. And then we could, create an event in here, custom event, continue attack. And then we could run our continue attack code here. So you can just call continue attack. However, let's not do it this way. Let's avoid using a cast if we don't need to. There's no reason that we need to cast the combat character. And that is because we don't need all of the variables and components that the character has. All we need to do is to tell the character to continue the attack. And also we may want to use this animation notify with different character blueprints that don't derive from BP_combat player character. So a really good way to do this would be with a blueprint interface. So let's go to blueprints, interfaces, under blueprints, let's create a new blueprint interface. We'll call this one Combat BPI. And this interface will be used as the name suggests for anything combat related. Let's create a function continue attack. Okay, now compile, and let's go to the combat player character, and here in class settings, under implemented interfaces, let's add our combat BPI. Okay, and now we don't need this custom event. Let's add event continue attack. And now we can go back to our continue attack animation notify, and we can call continue attack message. By now you should be pretty used to interfaces, but basically what we're doing here is we're just getting the owner of the mesh component, which in this case will be the combat character, to tell the combat character to run the implemented event for continue attack. And so referring back to the flowchart, after the amount of time has passed, we need to check, was the attack saved? If it was, we continue the attack. And so what that's going to be is we're going to add a branch, and we're going to check, we're going to get the combat component, and we're going to check, is attack saved? If the attack was saved, then we continue the attack, like this. But we can't forget to set is attacking to false. And also, unless we set it to false, we will have the same exact issue with is attack saved. So is attack saved will be set to true and never set back to false. So what we need to do is get the combat component and set is attack saved to false only if it is true. So if is attack saved is true, we set it back to false. So that way is attack saved doesn't get stuck to being true. Okay, and now let's go to our attack animations. Go to combat system, course files, animations, light sword, light attack. Let's open up our animations and add the animation notify to them. So at about the point where we want to continue the attack combo, let's add an animation notify. And the animation notify that we need to add is continue attack AN. Okay, and copy that. And let's add it to the other animations as well. Okay, now save all. Okay, now let's test it out and see if that works. I'm comboing through all the attack animations, and even though I'm spamming the attack button, he waits until an amount of time until he can continue the attack. And after the character has stopped attacking and I press attack again, I can still attack. So everything is working just fine. Instead of just doing a random index, let's use our attack index. So that way, we can cycle through each attack from the array one at a time in order. Let's uncheck get random index. So how do we implement a way to cycle through the array based on the index? Well, one way that you could do that is with a switch statement. And what I mean by switch statement is, as I mentioned earlier, an array has multiple elements, and you can get a specific element using an index. And the index for an array starts at 0, so it goes 0, 1, 2. It doesn't start at 1, it starts at 0. So using the tough sort as an example, for the array element at index 0, we have attack 1. For index 1, we have attack 2. And for index 2, we have attack 3. So to implement a system that plays multiple animations based on the attack index, we could get the attack count, we can call switch statement, switch on int, and we can add new pins for each animation in the array. So in the case of our tough sword, we only have 3 elements. We can add 0, 1, 2, and here you can play a montage, and you can play a different animation based on the index like this. And something like this will work without a problem. However, in order for something like this to work, you would have to add this to a weapon actor, and you would have to set this up manually for each weapon. And as your project scales up, that's going to be a lot of manual work. But as a programmer, we should create functions to do things for us whenever we can. So that way we can minimize the manual work that we have to do, which is the entire reason that we created the attack montages in an array. So now let's create a function that will do all of this for us. What we're going to do is we're going to get the combat component. Let's get our attack count, and let's plug that in here as the input for attack index. Okay, and once we go into here, and we're going to get the attack count, and from there we're just going to increment. Okay, and now what should happen now is attack index by default is 0, so the default value is 0. So the first time it'll go through here, and it will get from the attack index at index 0, which will be the first element in the array. And after that, it'll play the first montage in the array and increment. After it increments, once it comes back through, the attack count will now be 1. Once it's 1, it'll get from the attack montages array at index 1, which will be the next element in the array, and it will play the second montage. It'll increment to 2, and it'll come back through, and it'll be 2, and it'll get the third element in the array. And remember that arrays start at index 0 and goes 0, 1, 2. So even though it's index 2, this will be the third element in the array, which will be our third attack. And after that, it'll increment to 3, and once it comes back through, it'll be 3. And in our particular array, we only have 3 montages set. Here it'll be trying to access the 4th montage. And if it tries to access the 4th montage when we only have 3 set, it'll return nothing, and it will go to the is not valid path. So let me go ahead and show that to you. Let's go ahead and print string. And I'll print montage not valid. We can set this to some sort of color so we can see it a little better. So I'm going to go ahead and play. And 1, 2, 3, and after that, montage not valid. And so to resolve that issue, what we need to do is get the incremented attack count, and we need to check to see if we've exceeded the last index of the array by going to our combat system, blueprints, actors, our weapon here. We can see the last index is index 2. And if we wanted to, we could just hard code 2 here. And so if it's greater than 2, we can set attack count back to 0, which is the first index. So let's test that out and see if that works. First, second, third, and after that, the character loops back to the first. So that works exactly as it's supposed to. However, we don't really want to hard code it like this. We want to check dynamically at runtime what the last index is. And what I mean by at runtime is just while the game is running. And the reason why we want to do it dynamically at runtime like that is because we could have several different kinds of weapons, and each weapon could have a different amount of attacks. So some attacks may have 3 attacks, some weapons may have 4 attacks, and so on. There actually is a way that we can do that built into the engine. So what we can do is simply get the attack montages array, and from the array, we get the last index. And that just gets us the last index of this particular array, which will be 2 in this case. And so this will work exactly the same without having to hard code the value. So let me go ahead and demonstrate that. attacks once, twice, and here's the third attack, and he goes back to the first. So that works exactly the same. And with that, our attack combo system is pretty much finished. However, we do have a bug. The issue that we have now is the character is constantly canceling into pulling his weapon out. To fix that, it's really simple. What we can do is create a branch. And here in the branch, we can get the mesh, we can get anim instance. And we can check, is any montage playing? And from there, we can add a not boolean and plug that into the condition. So this will only allow toggle combat to continue if any montage is not playing. But as I'm going to demonstrate, this may not be ideal. And the reason for that is, as soon as you attack, and this might make things more difficult for us later down the line whenever we try to implement more things into our system, we may want to allow this action at some specific time, but we can't because a montage is playing. So what we can do in that case is, let's get the combat component, let's get this attacking. Check is attacking, is attack not boolean. And also we need to create another boolean. We'll call this one B is toggling combat. So here, we're going to set is toggling combat to true. Okay, now we need to get is toggling combat, and we need to call not boolean. And so we only need to continue if the character is not attacking, and this just returns a logical and. Basically what this means is that each one of these has to be true in order for this to return true. So that means is the character not attacking and is the character not toggling combat, both must be true before we can continue. And whenever we continue, we set toggling combat to true. Compile and save. Okay, now we can go into the attack event and we can copy the same thing. And let's just add an event for attacking to make things easier for us. Go ahead and move this down here, and let's create a custom event. We'll call it attack event. Okay, now move this over here, and unplug this and this. Now let's run the attack event. And also run the attack event here. Okay, now paste those conditions into the graph. Create a branch. And we should only continue the attack if the character is not attacking and if the character is not toggling combat. Okay, now compile and save. We can also go ahead and collapse these nodes to a function. So go ahead and collapse the function. We can call this function can perform toggle combat. Okay, let's make that a pure function. Let's open that up. And here you can customize the conditions that will allow the character to perform the toggle combat. And we can do the same thing here for attacking. So let's go ahead and collapse that to a function. We'll call this one can perform attack. Make that a pure function. Compile and save. Okay, now let's test this out and see what happens. So whenever we start attacking, the character pulls his weapon out. However, the character is now no longer able to attack. And the reason why that is because toggle combat is set to true, but it is never set to false. So a really simple way to fix that would be to add a delay. And after the delay, we set toggle combat to false. Let's go ahead and test that out. And as you can see, that works just fine. A more ideal way to fix this would be to implement a reset system. We've only got a basic setup so far, but we already need a system to reset the combat system. However, this video has become quite long, so we're going to implement resetting the combat in another video. But before I end this video, there's one more really important thing that we need to implement, and that is a way to reset the attack. So if the character does attack 1 and attack 2, and you wait, and you attack again. As you can see, he does attack 3. But we don't want that. We want the attack count variable to be reset after a certain amount of time. And the way we're going to do that is basically the same way we did continue attack. So we're going to use an interface function and an animation notify. So let's go back to our combat BPI and let's create a new function. And this function will be called reset attack. Okay, now compile and save. And let's go to blueprints, anim notifies, and let's create a new animation notify. So blueprint class, anim notify. Let's call this one reset attack AN. Okay, open it up, and let's override the receive notify. And you should be pretty used to this by now. We just get the owner of the mesh component, which is the combat character. We send the combat character a message and tell the combat character to run his event for reset attack. Okay, now compile and save. Let's go back to the combat character and let's implement the event. Event reset attack. To reset the attack, we're going to set attack count to 0. And we can also reset some of these other variables as well, like we can set attack save to false, and we can set is attacking to false as well. Since we're resetting a bunch of variables from the combat component, we can go to the combat component and we can create a function and call that reset attack. And inside this function, we set attack count to 0. We set is attacking to false. We also set is attack save to false. Okay, compile and save. And let's go to the combat player character. And now we don't need to call these. We just need to call reset attack. Okay, now let's go add the animation notify to our attack montages. So let's go to combat system, course files, animations, light sword, light attack, and let's add the animation notify to all 3 of these animations. So at the point where you want the attack to be reset, you simply call reset attack. And let's copy that and add that to the other 2 montages. Okay, now let's save all. Our attack reset system is working perfectly. Attack once, attack twice. If I wait, and then attack again, he goes back to the first attack. And also there are no bugs either, so whenever I attack once, attack twice, I can attack again, so the character isn't stuck in attacking. That character can still combo through attacks like normal. We now have an attack combo system that can cycle through an array of attack animations in order or at random. We have learned about arrays, fixed bugs with our attack combo system, and implemented continue attack and reset attack systems. Thanks for watching. In the next video, we are going to implement a directional dodging system.